More now on this candid, captivating, critical interview from John Kelly. A big question that Kelly answered is, why go on the record and go on tape right now with only 2 weeks until America votes? And here's what he said.
I think this issue of using the military to go after American citizens is one of those things I think is a very, very bad thing. Even to say it for political purposes to get elected, I think it's a very, very bad thing, let alone actually doing it.
Joining us in our fifth seat tonight, Iraq veteran and founder of and CEO of Independent Veterans of America, Paul Rieckhoff. Paul, good to see you. That was the moment. He basically said, and then doubled down subsequently in another interview, Trump said that he believed that the enemy was within. He named names, United States congresspeople, Democrats, who he wanted to put the military on them. How does that land for you? And does it explain why John Kelly would then decide to put all of his hesitancy aside and come forward right now?
Yes, because General John Kelly is a patriot. I don't think anybody at this table would argue with that. He's a man who served his country honorably under tremendous circumstances. He lost his son on the altar of freedom to a landmine in Afghanistan. This is a man who cares very deeply about his country. And many of us have been waiting to hear from him because we've heard all these quotes and anonymous sources, and you wanted to hear the man's voice. And that's what you heard now. And I think he's sounding this alarm a couple weeks out because he's concerned about the future of the country.
Is
and
it
I think
enough
that
for you? Or
I'm already there. I don't need it to be moved, right? But I do think it's a culminating storm of people who were sounding the alarm just a couple weeks out because they see how high the stakes are. And it's a chorus now, right? It's General Mark Milley, who is his chairman of the Joint Chiefs. It's his former vice president. It's the former Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney. It's his former Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. It's basically the entire military and defense community that served under him that is now opposing him. And it's because it's ultimately, in my view, about the commander-in-chief test. And that's what's going to move, especially independent voters, in this next couple of weeks. They're going to go to the booth. It's only going to be them in that switch. And they're going to have to decide if they're comfortable with this person being the commander-in-chief and leading our men and women in uniform, which might include their sons and daughters, which is why the integrity piece and the Atlantic piece and all this other stuff is important, too, because you're voting for the man's character and integrity or their lack of.
I think you can't ignore the fact that so many of these people, to Paul's point, are in the national security space. Those are the people who are the most concerned about this. And some of these stories we've heard before. But here is John Kelly talking more about this episode, or these episodes, he says, there were multiple of them, in which Trump disparaged people who were wounded in action, who were captured in their service. Here's what he said.
He basically said to you that those who died for America on the battlefield were losers and suckers, and he said it more than once.
Yes, but he would he would say it would always, something else would get him going, oftentimes again the game. But he never could wrap his arms around why people would serve the country in uniform. What was in it for them? That was the general theme.
What was in it for them?
It's his voice. I mean, he wants there to be no doubt that he believes that he saw this happen, he heard this happen. You know, there's been a lot of speculation saying maybe he didn't say that, maybe he doesn't really believe it. Now he's going on the record. You're hearing his voice. He wants everybody in the world to hear his voice. The only person you haven't heard from is General Mattis. He's kind of the last holdout that people want to hear from. Maybe we'll hear from him and others in these final days, but that would be just about the only voice that served under him that hasn't spoken out in opposition of him in the last couple of months or years.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What do you think of the way Biden and Harris have treated the families of the Abbey Gate soldiers?
I'm not going to go into a different topic. No.
I'm not.
If this is your show and you want to ask me questions, we can line them up, but that's a total distraction.
Well, my question is,
we're
not going to take debate on that.
One second.
I've been very vocal about Abbey Gate.
Let me just get in here.
I've been very vocal about Abbey Gate and other issues. We're talking about one singular issue.
I hear what you're saying about, you know, the Abbey Gate families and the concerns that they've raised. But I don't understand why, even if you take that as fact, you can't just address what's on the table here, which is about Donald Trump, his actions, his words, his character. I mean, a year ago, I kind of wonder, a year and a half ago, if you had heard, I mean, you probably heard about some of these things. I'm not sure that you would have defended Trump on this. Well, so why do you defend him now?
The reason I'm bringing it up is because and I revere the military. I'm not in the military. I didn't serve. I revere people who do. And there are a varying amount of opinions on Trump and the current administration from people up and down the military. As David said earlier, there are lots of military officers that support
Not
Trump.
among all the senior
There
officials.
are
there
lots of rank and file that support Trump, and I'm sure there are some that support the other party. So I'm hearing from lots of different voices. And tonight, we're fully focused on the military voices who are critical of Trump, but we seem to be forgetting the treatment of the military by Biden and Harris, and specifically that's been in the news during this campaign, these soldiers' families from Afghanistan. Look, I'm not in the community, and I respect everybody's voice, but I just think it's a one-sided criticism.
There should be a standard for the commander-in-chief, and I think that's...
No one has ever accused Biden and Harris of disparaging the families of people.
Well, they have accused them of
No
not giving them the time of day. Harris has never spoken to them, and they say they have been neglected by this White House. I think that's
I've been extremely critical of the Biden handling of Abby Gate, as have many other people, and I think the key here is being objective. I think that Abby Gate was a low point of the Biden presidency. He lost me and a lot of people on that day, but that doesn't mean that you can't still evaluate someone else on whether or not they're qualified to be commander-in-chief. And that's ultimately what we're talking about here.
Well, I'm just saying,
a couple weeks out, we're talking about whether or not mostly independents in key swing states, many of which are veterans, are going to determine this election. They're going to decide, and they're going to judge on character, they're going to judge on the commander-in-chief test, and they're going to judge on how they ultimately feel about safety and security. And this may impact that decision. That's why Kelly's speaking out now. He wants you to know how he stands. And there may be others who will speak out in the next couple of days. We're not past another October surprise, but he wants everybody to hear it, and he wants it to be one of the last things you hear before you go to the polls.
So I'll just say this, having spent some time with the president, I was the chairman of the American Battle Monuments Commission. I was there with General Kelly and General Dunford and at Ain Marne Cemetery. The story that the Atlantic wrote, not the story today, but the previous story about suckers and losers is complete fiction. Zach Fuentes and Dan Walsh and others who canceled the trip before Donald Trump, that starts out, Donald Trump canceled the trip to the cemetery. It was pouring rain. There was no way to get there, a 2-hour drive in a car. I went with General Kelly. I went with General Dunford. I went with others to the cemetery as the chairman. I went to the top of the hill. November 10th is the Marine Corps birthday. That is sacred ground. Ain Marne Cemetery, sacred ground. It's a Bellawood Cemetery, not Ain Marne. I wanted to go to the Ain Marne Cemetery. Bellawood Cemetery is the Marine Corps. There's a monument at the top. I went to the top of there with some other staffers. We drank a shot in honor of General Kelly's son. There was no talk about how terrible Donald Trump was at that time. I'm not doubting. Listen, I'm not doubting. Listen, I'm not doubting. Hold on.
Don't you
now?
Listen, I'm not talking about.
Just as a question here, I know that this is
I have
your
very
view
strong
on
feelings.
this.
I've been with him a lot. I've been with Trump a lot.
We've talked about it a lot. But do you acknowledge that John Kelly was the chief of staff? He was with Trump at every moment. Do you acknowledge that you may not have been there for that moment?
I'm saying my experience.
Or any of the other moments that John Kelly says where this
happened. I do not doubt General Kelly's word in one sec. There's context of things, and I'm just telling you, in the many times that I've been with the president in military settings, every Army-Navy game, I went with the president. I greeted wounded warriors and their families, Gold Star families, with the president. I introduced them to the president in the stadium, in the White House, and other places, out of earshot of people. I saw firsthand how he interacted with these people, wounded, badly disfigured soldiers, their families, dead people, dead kids. I mean, terrible situations. So my firsthand experience is something different. I'm not dismissing General Kelly's experience.
We also have our own personal experience of witnessing what he says year after year.
That's right.
You were there. I respect your opinion, and you saw that. But I also saw what he said about John McCain. And I saw what he continues to say consistently about not just military people, but all kinds of people. I did an interview earlier today. I wouldn't want him around my kids because not only are our enemies watching, and not only are our troops watching, our children are watching. And this is a person we expect to represent the office of honor and integrity. And that's something we've all seen for years and years, and we will all make our judgment when we go to the voting booth.
Sometimes you come on TV and you kind of prepare for what you are supposed to say or should say. And I don't know if there's been a time where I felt more ill-equipped to participate in the discussion, because you have people at the table who, unlike Scott, myself, and Ashley, who have given close to what Abraham Lincoln called the last full measure of devotion. And what I would ask viewers and everyone else is to take the totality of the circumstances. At this point in time, I'm not like a CNN political commentator. I'm a voter who just needs to hear what people are saying who matter. And that means I'm listening to people who are close to Donald Trump. And look, I love David Irvin. I know him well. I mean, I trust David with my family. I don't know if I do the same with Donald Trump, and that's my personal opinion. That's the way I vote. I just met him a minute ago, and he has on a much better looking suit than I do right now at this particular point in time.
You got some sharp shoes on.
Shh. But what I'm saying is that I think that we have to take the totality of circumstances, because sometimes those of us who want to weigh in, and I want to be here and be like, you know, Kamala Harris made a tough decision in Afghanistan and this, that, but I don't know what that feels like for you two.
I guess I wonder, here's the thing that I wonder. I mean, I hear what you're saying about you didn't have those experiences, but someone else did.
And I'm not dismissing them, I'm not downplaying them.
So someone else did. So you're hearing that someone else actually did, multiple other people actually. Again, I come back to this. If you heard that about somebody and you personally didn't, it's like, you know, you didn't personally witness the person that you've known for your whole life doing something really wrong, but someone else did. Someone was victimized by it. Do you discount that as a he said, she said?
No, look, I think you know, as Bakari said, it's totality of circumstance. Everybody has to weigh and make their decision. That's the great thing about a democracy, right? You hear all these things, and everybody's going to go in on November 5th, and they're going to make a decision. And what I think, you know, Joe Biden once said, you know, this was his line, you know, don't compare me against the Almighty, compare me against the alternative. And I think that's what's happening in this
That's
case.
all we want.
That's all we want.
And listen, I think
if I'm comparing anyone
I understand.
to ever say that Hitler did something good, then the alternative is better. And I think that's what I think, and I guess I just keep asking the question, what is ever going to be disqualifying for Donald Trump?
Nothing.
So if you actually knew he said it,
well, I don't know.
I'm not saying I don't know if you know. None of us will ever know,
But
right?
by focusing only on the one thing he said,
But I agree,
we are being distracted.
It's not an isolated
How
event.
far do you have to go
That's
to
right.
It's not an
lose Dick
isolated.
Cheney?
That's
How
very
far do you
little
have to
of
go
this
to
is
lose your own
isolated,
Secretary of
to your
Defense?
point.
How far do you have to go to lose your own Chairman of the
staff.
Joint Chiefs? That is something we've never seen before. And that is something, regardless of what he said on one given circumstance, should resonate with
Well, I
people,
would just say
especially
this point.
Very last
How
word.
bad must it be then for 50% of Americans to say, yeah, I'm going to vote for him over Kamala, because we think the alternative
Right
is far
now it's
worse.
at 46 and some change.
Hey,
But we'll see.
this is a choice for most Americans, and
It is a
especially most
choice.
independents. They don't like either one of them.
I think
and
that-
that is the case for Kamala Harris to make, to say, you may not like me, but he's a lot worse. And
We can't-
he's trying to make the same case. And we're going to see how it shakes
We
out.
cannot lose sight, I mean, to what you just said, of the unprecedented nature of this whole conversation.
Yep.
Never had a president of the United States talked about in this way. Never had someone seeking that office talked about in this way. And that's always going to be in the history books.
Well, I'm
for
glad
this
we did it
country.
here civilly.
Well, Paul Rykoff, we appreciate you. Thank you, as always, for joining